The topic I'm explaining is titled Analysis of Sugiura Grid. To be more precise, my purpose is to analyze Mr. Sugiura's format design through the grid system. The Sugiura format design is embodied in the layout sheet. Format design and grid system and layout sheet all overlap with each other. Those familiar with designing on a computer think that there is no connection with layout sheets, but at least until the end of 1980s, when computers were not yet widespread, layout sheets were the core of book design. For the main text layout, thousands of layout sheets were printed out and worked upon. In the process of marking the arrangement of letters and photos on the layout paper, the sense of designer becomes visible. Layout sheets were tools for communication with editors and were also instructions for typesetting and printing stuff. It is a scenario for everyone involved in the work. Designers, editors, and printing companies use the layout paper as a medium. Layout paper was a multi-layered existence that visualized the format design and at the same time visualized the intention of the designer. Today's theme is called analysis. So what I'm going to talk about is not just considering the intentions of Mr. Sugiura, but rather what we can take in from the layout sheets and his work. Now that computer-based design DTP is spreading and a spread of ebooks are imminent, what should we understand from Mr. Sugiura's grid system? First, I will take up Rhizome. It was published as a special edition of Episteme. It was co-authored by the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze and the psychoanalyst Félix Guattari. With this book itself as an introduction, it later became a major work, Thousand Plateaus. Rhizome is a Latin word meaning underground stem or root stem. What meaning does root stem take? Roughly speaking, the West has long been constructing the tree-structured way of thinking and sorting. There is a source at the vertex and it branches by bisection. The whole is a united form with a center, and something is always on the lineage of something. For the time being, let us understand that the underground rhizome, which we do not know how it is intertwined in the ground, is an antithesis to the tree structure. I think a grid system with its origin in Europe is underpinned by two ideas. A pica is 1/6 of an inch or 12 points. I took this as one unit. The other is controlled by line. Why line? It is related to the major thesis from before. Alphabet letters are not square, and each character has a different width, so we don't know how many characters each line has. The character unit cannot be used, at least as a standard for the line length direction. It can be predetermined, but only the line spacing. There was no choice but to use picas as the unit for the length of the line. I imagine that in the 1950s and 1960s, when Mr. Sugiura and other young designers turned to the grid system, they saw that it was afferent to the line. Just as in Rhizome, Deleuze and Guattari expressed doubts on the tree structure, Mr. Sugiura may have tried to explore a grid system unique to Japan, which is located in East Asia. The text of Rhizome is complex and includes quotations in addition to the so-called text, as well as annotations to the original text and notes by the translator. It is multi-layered, and that is the appearance of a rhizome. If you measure the dimensions of a drawing on paper and actually see it like actual survey of architecture, what kind of grid system will be able to perceive? The size of the paper of the rhizome book is 8 points by 48 times wide. Vertical is 8 points by 80 times. That is, in other words, it is almost the golden ratio. Next, a 6-layer type page with line length of 9 point and 10 characters is set in the format. Based on this plate, complicated multi-column systems are generated, as I mentioned earlier. The contents up to this point can be written in textbooks in design, but I noticed the following facts. The golden ratio lurks in the dimensions of various details. Secondly, the relationship between the gutter and the margin of the page edge is the golden ratio. The golden ratio is not only in the proportion of the whole, but also in the details. From the appearance of the page, when I was able to see how parts of the page were acting in concert with the whole, I shuddered. Is Mr. Sugiura's format design so deep? I said that the grid system that came from the West might have had a bias towards the line, but I wonder what would happen if Mr. Sugiura were to do format design for Western typesetting. Let's take a look at Asian culture, a publication from Asia Pacific Cultural Center for UNESCO that provided in-depth information about Asia in general. The special feature of this issue is embroidery. It is the embroidery that uses thread to draw pictures and patterns on cloth. This issue 34 was published in 1983. The concept was that the layout was done in black and white and it was printed and completed with opaque or fluorescent ink on colored paper. The top and bottom of the Asian culture page is divided by 1 pica, which is the leading dimension. Note that even the margins are controlled by lines. Until then, a grid system dealt only with the printed matter. Now the leading characters such as characters and visual materials were dealt with and the grid rarely extended to the frame of the margin. Mr. Sugiura has extended the grid system to the margins. Sugiura's format design conveys the message, a blank space is a silent line. Let us observe Asian culture. The vertical measure is 49 pica, 49 lines, taking 7 lines as a unit. The entirety can be divided into 7 parts. The horizontal direction also uses 1 pica as the unit. There are 49 parts, and here as well it is broken down as 7 times 7. The Encyclopedia of Social Sciences is a large-scale encyclopedia published on a social enterprise scale. If you give this a grid, you can see that the dimensions of tail Q and 3 mm are spread throughout. Each line is 21 characters long, line fade is 18H, 3 lines are taken as a unit, and from top to bottom it is 12 mm. By the way, both Q and H, which are units of photo typesetting, represent the same as 1/4 mm, but Q can be used for character size and H for distance and length. The top to bottom of the Encyclopedia of Social Sciences is 18 units multiplied by 3 lines, and it seems that the number 3 is used mysteriously. In the Encyclopedia of Social Science, the whole was first conceived as a 5-column set with 10 characters per column, and a column was also assigned to the margin of the illustrations. The remaining 4 stages are combined to give form to 2 more stages. Small units are grouped into large units to form a format. A set of detailed grids are introduced to the format design. Grid orientation is given hierarchy. It can also be said that characters or lines that are units form a bigger grid. As Mr. Sugiura said earlier, I feel like I am witnessing the hierarchy of the grid that extends to society. The Sugiura grid system is available not only for the text but also for the binding. That can be confirmed with Kodansha's new library of knowledge. Mr. Sugiura has been involved in the work for more than 40 years since the early 1960s, and the binding design has been reformed over many issues of the magazine. Now let us take up the cover design of the later period. Since the line spacing is 8H and 12Q, the line feed is 20H and 5 mm. The horizontal is divided with 20H. It is a partition using lines. Control using lines is extended to the front book sleeve as well. In the size of the book, the ratio of the top to the bottom, left to right, is in golden ratio. The golden ratio rounded off is 5:8. 5:8 can also be thought of as 2.5:4. Therefore, the cover is printed with the vertical divided as 4 and horizontal as 2.5. One grid is 43 mm. The reason why this division can be concluded to be innovative is that for designers, even the disagreeable space for barcodes and ISBN codes are now firmly contained in the 43 mm grid. Here as well, small units are grouped together. It does not deny the Western European line-centered grid system, but emphasizes the grid that has square characters as its unit. It can be said that due to Mr. Sugiura, the Japanese grid system was born. Next is visual communication. If you overlap the saved layout sheet with the actual page, you can see that the design is neatly placed on the grid. When the grid is erased, the illustrations appear to be constructed freely. This reliance with unbound breathing is the trick to dealing with the grid system. Let us analyze visual communication. The top to bottom and left to right of the page are controlled by characters and lines. In the horizontal direction, it is 8Q into 117.5 times. Here, 5 levels of 19 characters per line are set. In the vertical direction is 12Q times 96 lines. Taking 3 lines as a unit, we have 32 units. The interesting thing is that the 8Q caption and the 10Q text are converted so that 8Q times 19 characters is approximately equal to 10Q times 15 characters. Incorporating character size conversion at the design stage is not possible with the alphabet. Although this layout sheet is set horizontally, it is an embodiment of a grid system that has been made Japanese. Well, this is the complex grid system of Jane Uchushi Sama Cosmographica. The unrelated printing plate is the golden ratio. Horizontally, the line feed of the plate is 20H and 28 lines. Taking 4 lines as a unit, we get 7 units. Also worth noting is that 4 lines of 1 unit are assigned to the margins of the body set. This was the analysis of the line control horizontal direction. In the vertical direction, the plate is 12Q into 78 times. This 78 is an amazing number. In the second, third, fourth and fifth columns, the number of characters and the column spaces are integers. Allow me to talk a little personally here. When I was looking through the data index of Chiejo against Asahi Shimbun, I sought after the originality of this 78. As a result, I delivered it, but the top to bottom of Chiejo was 78, and I found grounds to argue that the number 78 was not born by chance. I remember that it took me 3 days to find out this 78, but Mr. Sugiura had easily done it. I was amazed by it. The idea of 78 times based on this type of character is extremely Japanese because it takes advantage of the feature that the number of square characters can be used by the length of the line. The control in the horizontal row is Western and vertical is Japanese. We just saw how the second, third, fourth and fifth columns are created organically by the magic number 78. Let us see other examples of organically created multi-layered columns. The quarterly Paideia was a spiritual thought magazine that could be said to be predecessor of Episteme. The layout sheet of the prototype was left at the Sugiura office, so let us observe it. Vertically, it is 8.75 times. Horizontally, it's 8.50 times. Top to bottom, left to right is 3:2. The columns open in 2 short interval columns, peg 2 columns, different size, top and bottom two columns, single column centered in the page, one column, two column, three column, and four column layout, all are created from a basic grid. The grid system coordinates various multi-column layouts. When the specific characters and illustrations from the layout sheet flow in, the book as a whole appears as a structure with flow and change. I think that grid systems and layout sheets are not objects to be appreciated, but merely means to embody the book. Another example is the quarterly magazine, The Future of Japan. Another example is Japan's Future, a rather large quarterly comprehensive magazine. Its third issue was published in 1972. The layout sheet has two types, 8.3 column layout and 9.2 column layout. I can imagine that the goal of the grid system in this book was to match the 8.3 column and 9.2 columns first. What if this becomes a concrete page? Two types of typesetting with different end-of-life processing are mixed together, boxed in and uneven. There are other examples of coexistence of different things. The added characters are printed in Mincho and Gothic. Also, if you look at the Gothic, the kanjis are in Gothic typeface and hiragana are in the antique typeface. It's a combination of two different typefaces. In other words, Gothic antique. As a result, a dynamic appears that was unimaginable from the layout sheet. It is a design that shows how the specific text and illustrations flow into the layout sheet, and you can see that the existence of a layout sheet is not limited. Text and illustrations are arranged in detail and dynamic margins appear. I will now shift the topic to margins. This is the main text of the book, Departure to Darkness by Kazumi Takahashi. The part where the listener asks a question is put together in short Gothic antique, and as a result, blank spaces appear vividly everywhere. As Mr. Sugiura said before, Mr. Takahashi Kazumi passed away on the 3rd of May 1971. The publication date of this book was October 1 of the same year. It is almost a discourse told like a last will. In addition, the colophon states that the text version is 9H 60 times into 40 times. In other words, it is casually and clearly written that the ratio is 2:3. I can't help but think that polymorphism in the margins that can be seen here and there on the pages expresses the sense of despair at losing Kazumi Takahashi, a great literary figure. The splendor of Sugiura grid is that the shape of the margin becomes apparent only when the concrete letters and illustrations collide with the layout paper. When you materialize it, you can see the margins that were not apparent in the layout paper. It is as if the margins have become organized. Let us confirm how margins that have become well divided rise to the leading role with the book that has margin as its signature. This is a French textbook in the margins of French by Shiguhiko Hasumi. In these margins, there are 4 strange points in the horizontal and 6 in the vertical. An analysis of this book reveals that the format is first of all the golden ratio and is slightly converted to the golden ratio of 5:8 or 2:3 through a square. It is a distorted grid system and the grid points take the form of small black circles. Mr. Sugiura reveals his hand like an architecture that turns the structure facing out, specifying that it is this type of grid. The weight of the margin shows signs of being contained. Sugiura grid dynamically draws out the individuality and exceptionality of the concreteness of text and illustration. The grid system is not a realm where the bumpy world is experienced as flat, but a place where foreign bodies and noise are made dynamic. It is a place that creates drama, like a baseball or soccer field. From the box of the brilliant 100 haiku, the box has a character design that has been carved from three colors of yellow, red, and indigo. The cover of this book is white foil stamped on mica powdered paper with a pattern of Chinese constellation map. The full view of the constellation map is shown in blue on the end paper. Because of the stars, it becomes a special title page. Finally, the title page of the table of contents. After the table of contents, we follow the title page of the main text and title page of the chapter to enter the main text. If you continue like this, you can see the rectangle of the grid, and at the same time, you can feel the sympathy of the characters trying to break through the grid. Next is La Nuit Remue by Henri Michaud. Henri Michaud was a poet, a painter, and a man who crossed the border between literature and painting. I think that he was an artist who continued to think about the themes of his life, the human unconscious. It is common knowledge that line spacing is usually narrower than the text characters, but here the line spacing is about twice as wide as the text character. The theme of the Sugiura grid was creating margins. The emergence of the margin extends to the line space in La Nuit Remue. Just as Henri Michaud shed light on the unconscious, Mr. Sugiura foregrounded the space between the lines, which is usually our consciousness. Now for the margins in the Folklore of Mayhem by Takayuki Kan. One line of the main text on the odd number pages is removed, so the pillar and two page numbers are placed there. Compared to even numbered pages, odd number pages have one less line. The left and right pages do not really have different formats. Asymmetrical margins are effective because there is a reference point called the grid. From the Wilderness of Poetry by Akira Shimizu. In the text, 4 punctuations are placed as a trace of the mini grid system. Here too, if it is a pillar on an odd page, the page number is summarized and it is an asymmetrical text design. If you imagine the reader's psychology, it shifts to the difference in the number of lines on the left and right pages and the depth. Of course, the colophon usually says the text version is 9.60 times by 40 times. In Mr. Sugiura's grid system, whether the text is organized by line or by character, whether it is vertical or horizontal, whether it is based on a square or proportional characters, the relationship between the printed surface and the margin, the figure and the bottom of the book, contradictory things are not making us choose, but conflict while together. Western and Japanese things, as well as Japanese and Asian things, coexist in movement. This is the last illustration. Masaki Hirooka's Momoe Yamaguchi is a bodhisattva. It is said to be a popular cultural theory centered on the diva Momoe Yamaguchi. On the cover, the space between title characters is boldly open, emphasizing the squareness of the characters. If you look at the cover one page below, you will see that the characters are evenly packed. If we separate the pages, the number of characters per page is completely opposite. In Sugiura grid system format design, you can see a dynamic equilibrium in which different elements coexist. I would like to conclude today with the following. Line and character, vertical and horizontal, square and proportional, printed surface and margins, images and the bottom of the book. In the Sugiura grid, these conflicting things are swirling around. Mr. Suzuki, thank you for your splendid analysis. It is not like I do not like numbers or analysis by nature, but when you are 78 years old, you will come to despise anything this tiresome. I thought it would be best to leave this to Mr. Suzuki, who is becoming an authority on the power of the page and the grid system. I think you are able to dissect various aspects of Sugiura grid with your acute management. Also, Mr. Suzuki's unique way of speaking was worth listening to. Thank you very much. Well, it's almost time. I apologize for not getting you to to the heart of the title of today's talk, Characters with Voices, Books that Pulsate. But I think we were able to talk about some of the ideas that underlie my book design. I would like to further deepen the theme of characters with voices, books that pulsate, and develop it greatly at the exhibition scheduled for next fall. Today, I would like to finish my talk with some of the videos I prepared without giving an explanation. Thank you for your kind attention. Four short stories written by Kunio Sukamota, a talented poet, for the quarterly Ginka, serialized four times in 1975. When I was asked to design this, I tried a variety of editorial design for each of the four stories, reflecting the themes of elaborate novels. Here you can see the third issue, Tsuyu no Yakata, Mention of Dew. The story unfolds with water droplets growing slowly between the lines of the novel, and surprises await as you turn the pages. Please have a look. The enlivening movement of the system of recognition has begun. These are the words written in editor's note of editor-in-chief episteme. From simple to complex, thermodynamics to evolution, noise, fluctuations, dialogue of disorder, structure formation, beginning and annihilation, etc. This is a special issue of season 2 of the philosophical magazine Episteme, which collects the noise of modern dynamic linkages under the name of structural change. It was a bulky volume created of more than 500 pages. The text layout that we have worked on is also a distributive structural design that continues to transform for each text. Please see the rhythm of the layout that undulates intricately across the pages.